This month, a new financial arrangement begins for us, the husband announced. The wife calmly agreed, having anticipated this development for quite some time. The question remained, however, was he truly prepared? Before we delve further into this narrative, please share your country of origin in the comments below and ensure you are subscribed to our channel as we bring you compelling life stories daily. Now, please enjoy your listening. The air in the kitchen was thick with the inviting scent of roasted chicken seasoned with herbs, creating a cozy ambiance. Olga carefully removed Dmitri's preferred dish from the oven, a whole roasted chicken she had prepared. For 18 years of their marital journey, the gentle clinking of silverware during their Friday dinners had been a familiar sound. Their 17-year-old daughter, Ekaterina, was accustomed to her role, diligently setting the table with practiced ease. Dinner is served, Olga declared, artfully placing portions of the hot chicken onto individual plates. Dmitri appeared in the doorway, a subtle tension present in his smile. Olga recognized it instantly. Years of shared life had honed her ability to decipher his expressions. It was the look he wore when preparing to share significant news, often with a degree of apprehension. "They will surely appreciate the aroma," Dmitri remarked as he took his seat at the table, with Ekaterina following close behind. Ekaterina, already seated, feigned absorption in her phone, though her peripheral vision closely monitored the unfolding conversation. "Listen, my dear," Dmitri began, carefully carving a succulent piece of chicken and savoring it before continuing. "I've been contemplating a minor adjustment to our family's financial planning." Olga settled into her chair with composure. Despite a prickle of unease, she maintained a steady demeanor. He paused, dabbing his lips with a napkin, clearly relishing the moment. "From this month forward, we will each manage our own separate finances. I've thoroughly analyzed our situation and concluded that it would be equitable for each person to manage their own earnings." He delivered this statement as if presenting a groundbreaking revelation. Ekaterina subtly lifted her gaze from her device, observing her father intently. "You are currently not employed," he continued, seemingly oblivious to his daughter's reaction. "Therefore, it would be sensible for me to allocate a fixed sum for your household expenditures, and I shall retain control over my personal funds." Olga calmly sliced a small portion of chicken, chewing thoughtfully. A palpable silence descended upon the kitchen. "That chicken smells delightful," Olga interjected evenly. Dmitri nearly sputtered. He had anticipated a different reaction, perhaps tears, a dispute, or outright indignation. Possibly even a dramatic outburst. Yet his wife calmly continued her meal, as if discussing a literary work at a book club. "You find it pleasing?" Dmitri inquired, his tone laced with bewilderment. "What more would you expect?" Olga replied, meeting his gaze. "Have you not already made your decision?" Ekaterina emitted a muffled giggle, quickly concealing it with her hand, masquerading it as a cough. "Well, yes," Dmitri stammered. With a sense of disquiet, Olga nodded. "Naturally, we have reached a consensus. By the way, this chicken turned out exceptionally well today." "What are your thoughts, dear?" she inquired of her daughter, shifting the focus to her school-related matters as if the discussion had concluded. Dmitri regarded his wife with a mixture of confusion and unease, unable to pinpoint the exact source of his disquiet. As Olga, with a smile, listened to Ekaterina recount her chemistry class experiences, a slight furrow of her brow was the only indication of her internal deliberations. If he desires an independent financial arrangement, so be it. Dmitri's Monday morning commenced unconventionally. Reaching for his preferred Italian coffee, known for its rich aroma and subtle bitterness, he found it absent from its usual spot in the kitchen cabinet. "Olga," he called out, peeking into the bedroom where he believed his coffee might be. Indeed, his wife's placid voice responded, "I did not repurchase it. As you may recall, I am now operating under a separate budget. Furthermore, your preferred coffee is rather extravagant." Dmitri paused, sensing an unfamiliar coolness in her tone. There was no trace of sarcasm or anger, merely a detached, almost businesslike indifference. He heard her humming as she prepared for her recently resumed Pilates sessions. "Very well," he conceded. "I shall acquire some on my way." This, however, was merely the preamble. That evening, Dmitri opened the refrigerator to find it stocked only with vegetables, milk, and a few containers clearly labeled by Ekaterina. "What is the meaning of this?" he inquired. "Is your portion of the refrigerator now devoid of contents?" Olga responded without looking up from her book. Ekaterina and I have purchased provisions for our allocated share. The following day, the shampoo ran out. Then on Thursday, the shaving gel was depleted. He also noticed the car's fuel gauge nearing empty, and the recent apartment utility bill was addressed solely to him. "I must insist on speaking with you," he declared on Friday morning, unable to contain himself any longer. As Olga was preparing to leave, she paused at the doorway to adjust her new scarf. "Is this some sort of demonstration?" she inquired with genuine surprise. "No," Dmitri insisted. "I simply wish to reiterate our new financial principles. Each person spends only what they earn. I am not employed in the same capacity as you." She kindly reminded him, "I am limited to the allowance you provide for household expenses, but you always," he faltered, realizing the extent to which he had previously taken many things for granted. Olga tilted her head slightly, a faint smile playing on her lips, observing him. "You always handled the grocery shopping, paid the bills, and fueled the car." "Yes, dear, but that was when we maintained a joint budget." Ekaterina emerged from her room, fully prepared for her classes. "Mom, have you remembered? We're going to the cafe after school," she said with feigned innocence, glancing briefly towards her father. "Of course, my dear," Olga responded, placing a reassuring hand on her daughter's shoulder. "I have set aside funds for our little indulgences." They departed, leaving Dmitri in the quiet solitude of the apartment. He slowly turned towards the refrigerator, noticing a note affixed to its door. The left side was designated for Mom and Ekaterina, the right for Dad. He stood there, a peculiar sensation welling within him. For the first time in a considerable while, he felt a sense of sadness and discomfort within his own home. Perhaps Olga has reconsidered. A fleeting thought crossed his mind. But no, it was the bank. "Dear customer, we wish to remind you of your outstanding utility bill payment." Dmitri gripped his phone tightly, drawing a deep breath. It appeared his meticulously crafted plan had encountered unforeseen complications. Dmitri let out a heavy sigh and opened the refrigerator. The shelves were bare. He would have to stop at the convenience store and the gas station, and he would need to purchase that coffee and shampoo. The shopping list unexpectedly grew quite lengthy, but he reassured himself. "It's merely a test," he mused, anticipating a return to normalcy soon. Yet deep down, a subtle apprehension began to surface. Would things ever truly revert to how they were? The day proved to be exceptionally challenging. Dmitri became ensnared in a morning traffic jam, followed by a series of setbacks at work. A crucial business deal collapsed, and to cap it all, he unexpectedly encountered a prominent client at the end of the day. His head throbbed, and his stomach growled with hunger. He barely had time for a quick sandwich from a nearby cafe. "I'll order something substantial," he decided. As he exited the parking lot, he opened his delivery app, intending to browse for pizza or sushi, but froze. Recalling his card balance, he remembered he needed to refuel yesterday. The cost of groceries had become prohibitively expensive, especially now that they were less readily available. Paying the bills, which had always been numerous, left him with barely a third of his intended discretionary funds. "Oh well," he muttered, checking his secondary card. "I had savings," he recalled, until he purchased a new phone last month, along with a watch, and then went out with friends. "I suppose I'll have to go home." There might be something edible there. Upon his return, he was met with silence and the unmistakable aroma of baked goods. Dmitri sniffed the air, detecting the scent of cabbage pies, his favorites, and his stomach churned with hunger. "Olga," he called out, entering the kitchen. A platter of golden brown pies sat on the table, accompanied by a note. "These are for Ekaterina and me. Your half of the refrigerator is on the right," Dmitri announced. He abruptly swung open the refrigerator door. On his designated shelf lay a solitary, half-eaten sandwich and a bottle of ketchup. At that very moment, Ekaterina entered the kitchen, a mug of tea in her hands. "Dad, you should be more mindful of your volume when you slam doors." She noticed her mother resting after her workout. Dmitri gestured towards the pie platter. "Those are Mom's pies." Ekaterina shrugged. "I'm sorry, but that's our food. You were the one who wanted a separate budget." She calmly took a pie and retreated to her room. Dmitri remained standing, gazing at the pies emanating the scent of his childhood. He attempted to summon enthusiasm again. "We could have dinner together," he suggested. "I'm afraid not, darling." Olga's even voice responded from the bedroom. "Ekaterina and I have already eaten. I'm quite exhausted after my gym session." Dmitri slumped onto a chair at the table. There was nothing to eat at home, ordering was too costly, and he lacked the energy to venture to the store. He retrieved his phone, intending to at least check the news, but the screen flashed a message. "Internet service payment required." "Olga, our internet is about to be disconnected," he exclaimed. "Oh, yes," she replied. "I am now only covering the mobile phone charges. The home phone service was registered under your name." Dmitri sat in the darkened kitchen, listening to Ekaterina's cheerful conversation with a friend in her room, while quiet music emanated from the bedroom, where Olga was likely engaged in her evening yoga routine, a practice that seemed to consume another half hour of her time. Defeated, he trudged to the bedroom. Olga began. "Carefully, perhaps we could revisit our budget discussion?" "Of course, dear." She remained engrossed in her tablet. "Tomorrow I have meticulously drafted a monthly expenditure plan. When you begin to meticulously account for everything, many things become remarkably clear." Something in her tone silenced him. He lay down on his side of the bed, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere in the kitchen, the old clock ticked steadily. It was the very same clock he had always intended to replace. He realized with a jolt that he didn't even know the cost of a new one. Sunday dawned overcast. Dmitri sat at the kitchen table, pensively stirring his beloved coffee. His funds were dwindling. The past week had been arduous. He had forgone dining out, his customary cappuccino, and suspended his gym membership. However, the most disheartening aspect was the palpable sense of alienation that now permeated their household. Olga entered the kitchen, clad in a new, elegant house suit. Where did she acquire the funds for such an outfit? She exuded the scent of expensive perfume. "We need to have a conversation," Dmitri stated decisively. "Yes," she replied, taking a seat opposite him, her arms crossed. "This," he gestured vaguely, "the entire kitchen setup, it's not working. Let's revert to how things were." "How things were?" Olga raised an eyebrow. "You wish to reinstate the joint budget?" He exhaled slowly. "I admit I may have been overly zealous. It's rather amusing." She rose and walked towards the window. "However, I believe the current arrangement is precisely as it should be." She turned back, a new expression in her eyes. "Dmitri, when we married, I held the conviction that a family is a unified entity. Then Ekaterina was born. I remained at home and you took that for granted. But I have always contributed financially." She chuckled. "Have you ever paused to consider why there was always food in the house, the internet was paid, the car was fueled, and your shirts were always ironed?" He remained silent. "Do you recall what Aunt Vera advised me 10 years ago? Never be financially dependent on another, never." Olga retrieved an envelope from a drawer, intended for savings. Initially, she relied on the money you provided. Then she turned her attention to handicrafts, selling her embroidered creations online. Subsequently, I acquired proficiency in manicures, and 3 years ago, I established an online boutique. Dmitri blinked. "You have a business." "Yes, dear." She placed the envelope before him. She presented bank statements, revealing a substantial income, nearly on par with his own, though she had chosen not to publicize it. Ekaterina entered the kitchen, pausing at the doorway. "Ekaterina is aware," Dmitri inquired hoarsely. Of course, his daughter approached her mother, squeezing her hand reassuringly. "Mom has taught me everything. I already possess my own personal bank account and savings." Dmitri looked at his wife and daughter, a sense of his world collapsing around him. He had believed he was in control of the situation. However, it became evident that control had long since eluded him. "Olga," she smiled. "You know, Dmitri, I am no longer the naive young woman I once was. I now understand the value of my own life, and you know what I have come to realize." She glanced at her daughter and added, "You were correct. It is indeed important that each individual lives on their own earnings." Dmitri suddenly grasped that everything had fundamentally changed, and not in his favor. He looked at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. "But why did you remain silent?" His voice tense and trembling, he asked. Olga set the papers aside, folded her hands on the table, and met his gaze. With a gentle smile, she replied calmly, "Because I did not wish to shatter your illusion of control. As long as it served us both, everything functioned smoothly. But when you decided to divide the budget," she shrugged, "I simply demonstrated to you what the reality entails." Dmitri stared at the documents laid out before him, a mixture of financial accounts, investment portfolios, and evidence of a stable income. All these years, this information had existed right under his nose, yet he had never truly perceived it. And now he finally managed to ask, "What happens next?" Olga narrowed her eyes, as if assessing his readiness for her response. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze direct. "Now we are renegotiating our terms, but this time on an equal footing." The antique clock, the very one Dmitri had intended to replace, continued its steady ticking, a sound that now seemed to mock his former conviction that he was the undisputed head of the household. 3 weeks had elapsed. The autumn sun cast lazy rays through the apartment windows, creating glints on the new clock, which now hung beside his grandmother's timepiece. Olga had insisted on keeping the old clock. Dmitri sat at the kitchen table, contemplating the family's financial plan, presented in 2 columns of figures, representing 2 equal contributions to the budget. It felt unfamiliar, somewhat uncomfortable, yet undeniably equitable. "Dad," Ekaterina appeared in the doorway. "Have you seen my blue notebook? All my calculations are in there." "Look on the shelf in the living room," he replied automatically. "By the way, how were your initial investments?" His daughter's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "Can you imagine? Those stocks Mom recommended have risen by 12%. I've almost saved enough for summer design courses," she exclaimed, hurrying off to find her notebook. Dmitri thoughtfully stroked his stubble. It was the first time Ekaterina had shared her financial plans with him. Previously, he might have dismissed her ambitions with a condescending smirk, given her 17 years. But now he understood the considerable capabilities of the women in his family. Olga entered the kitchen, carrying shopping bags. "What were you contemplating?" she inquired, unloading the groceries. "I was reflecting on how much I had previously overlooked. I was living alongside a successful businesswoman and remained entirely unaware." Olga smiled and placed a can of his favorite coffee before him, almost casually. "I was thinking, perhaps you might be interested in collaborating on my store's development." Dimitri's head snapped up. "You want me to work with you?" "And why not?" she replied, sitting down beside him. "Your business acumen is commendable. It's simply that you've been applying it rather inefficiently until now." He looked at her intently. Her eyes sparkled with the same fire that had captivated him long ago. "But keep in mind," she added seriously, "this will be an equal partnership, just like everything else now." He smirked, and her hand covered his. "You know what life has taught me?" Olga looked at him. "True love is not about control, but about mutual respect. It's not about one person ruling and the other obeying. It's about both individuals being strong and acknowledging each other's strengths." Dmitri realized he had once genuinely believed his role was to lead the family, with his wife depending on him. It turned out Olga had long been forging her own path, growing and building her future. Instead of vying for dominance, he could have become her ally. At that moment, Olga produced an envelope from her purse. "I haven't discarded the business plan. You can review it." Dmitri accepted the envelope, a peculiar sense of excitement stirring within him. He had a great deal to learn, for instance, the importance of finding balance rather than clinging to control, and that true strength lies not in subordinating others, but in collaboration. He smiled as he unfolded the envelope. "Let's take a look," he said. "Only this time I will pay closer attention to everything." Outside the window, the autumn wind swept golden leaves across the yard, a gentle reminder that change is inevitable, and this time, it was for the better. Did you find this story engaging? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback is invaluable to us. Thank you for listening. Until tomorrow.